phone call after phone call after phone call after phone call, farmers losing turkeys, and I say, what are you feeding turkeys? And they say, chick starter. Huge mistake. Bird's not getting the nutrients and the protein it needs.
Is that because of the bigger size?
Yeah, just the way they're a bigger size and just, that's a good question, just the way they're. Yeah, why don't you explain a little bit of what you discovered when you were breeding, or when you start hatching, what feed changes do you make, Jennifer?
I started at minimum a month before breeding. Before I start collecting eggs, I put my breeding stock on a 24% super breeder. We get it from southern states. Around here, that's the best place, best all I found thus far. And I have a 95% hatch rate. And I don't live in cat. Have you lost any chicks?
No.
Well, she got 96 birds, chicks, and something like that. We lost the one when I got there. She didn't lost any, and they're now 4 months old. They're just the strongest birds I've ever had in my life. The big thing I learned from this thing is never ever put that a chick get anything but starter grower, because the calcium content of any other feed will ruin their livers.
Because it's too high.
Too much calcium in standard feeds. A lot of people make that mistake, well, I'll just get regular feed and crunch it up small for chicks. And that was a big one. I didn't never have that problem that some people did. I thought, oh, I don't know why. Just,
Good, yeah.
So I know you don't want to draw too long on food, but I did have a quick question, which is this issue of whether or not there should be chicken and chicken byproducts, including feathering in chicken feed. And if you have any thoughts.
Anybody else have a problem?
it's kind of a personal choice. The chicken was sick, the other chickens will eat it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
definitely have seen that they
Chickens will
will
eat
eat
anything.
but
But if you think about it, it's been processed, it's been sterilized and beaten. I guess it's a personal choice. It's
Megan.
Well, from a scientific perspective, bovine somatoform encephalopathy, which is mad cow disease, was transmitted in sterilized feed where they were grinding up cow parts and non-sterilized, non-fully sterilized spine and brain parts and refeeding them to cattle as a protein source. And so they are processed and they are technically sterilized, but just from what we've been reading and the fact that we're having these weird things show up in the United States, originating in the United States, I would err on the side of caution and just say no critter products of the same critter in the feed at all. I mean,
our dilemma is that we can either do an all soy and grain-based feed, or we can do an all animal feed. And of course, they don't clarify if it's pork, or it might also be chicken sometimes. So that, I was just curious if anyone had.
Well, you can do a fish meal for protein source.
Oh, this is just if we get it at our option is basically southern states.
Oh.
Unless we just start doing special ordering of other products. But, so that's, we only have 2 options with them. So I just wanted to know if anyone had any thoughts on it.
Well, I'll tell you, right now, if you're interested, okay, you're gonna pay for this, but Reedy Fork, R-E-E-D-Y. Yeah, they're actually, we're growing our turkeys here on a no soy, non-GMO certified organic feed. And I'll tell you why I'm growing my turkeys here on that. It's because I think one of our best marketing guys in the Piedmont is east of Eden Farms, John Bosick. He's growing buckeyes for me. He'll grow out a few thousand this year. He's doing the exact same feed. Well, he's only got 100 turkeys, and he has that market for that no soy, non-GMO kind of certified organic feed. He tapped into that market. So I'm feeding that primarily because when he runs out of turkeys, I have the exact same turkeys, the exact same age, getting the exact same feed. He can go, hey Jim, I could use 50 more turkeys or 100 more turkeys or whatever. But he's now, George Teague is now blending our own. We gave him the recipe, and he's blending, doing our recipe, and it comes here in 1-ton tote bags.
And the protein source is fish.
It's fish meal, and you'll see our turkeys. We're good.
What about the cost? Is it cost effective,
Um,
or you don't know?
I know, I'll hit on that in marketing, I'll give you some numbers. Yeah. Because it's definitely, that's a great question, has to be addressed.
On that, I have a blank or something. I recommend blank to everything.
Crumble
Crumble.
instead of pellet, it's just my opinion. Now, under recommended books for feeding recipes, I would write down, it's an oldie goldie, it's not in my top 10 list, it's called Feeds and Feeding. And I cannot remember who the author is of that book, but if you Google it and try and find it, that's a very, very good book, and I apologize that I don't have the author's name. Now, what about, I didn't put anything under foraging because what you use for forage in South Carolina can be different than what we use in North Carolina. What we use in North Carolina might be different than Northern Virginia. So let's just kind of, those of you who are into the whole grass and foraging, I don't know, I'm sure Bub, you might, I don't know what you're doing there, or anybody want to talk a little bit about forage? Yeah.
We actually attended another a workshop that was put on for property extension agents last year. And he talked about the foraging aspect. And what was interesting, and this was, I can't remember his name, but anyway, this guy's a poultry specialist. But he actually said that chickens that
Dan Pompo.
Yeah, what's his name? He actually was talking about chickens. One, it was interesting, that chickens get stupid after about 16 to 18 weeks. They're learned it by then, they're not gonna learn it like roosting and the foraging aspect, if you can get them foraging, as soon as you can get them foraging as chicks, the better they're gonna feed themselves the rest of their lives. But, was that the more they forage, the more calories they're gonna burn. You still, actually, he said, you still need to feed them, as much as you would a chicken within a cage, because they're going to burn some of those calories foraging. But we're finding that they're foraging. Their waste is greener now that they're foraging more. Because we're pushing them out of the coop, trying to get them to stop huddling in the coop so much. And so it does seem like you said, the less we do for them, the more they do for themselves, which is kind of contrary to what we were told at that point in some ways. But he also did say that freshly mowed, if you keep it mowed, they're going to eat the new growth more readily than they will old grass. If it's grass that's been allowed to grow and then just fall over, that's going to be not as good for them as all the new growth. So you need to mow it.
They follow me. Like I said, I have about 15, and I'm telling you, I get on my tractor, start mowing grass, my lawn tractor. It's like I got something in there just one. They follow right behind me and they just pick at that grass. I thought it was the bugs, exactly. That's what I figured. But I get that lawnmower out there, I figured they'd kind of shy away. They see me get on that lawnmower, they come run, they start crawling, they come running.
They're right away.
Yeah, I'll go back there and then up here to Jennifer.
Bill Mollison, who's the father of permaculture, recommends planting a lot of mulberry trees.
What were you going to say?
This year I spent a lot of time on pastures. I just want my birds on green grass all the time. So I did one area in Kentucky 31, I did one in Tall Fescue, and I left one in the orchard to just whatever weeds popped up in my area. My county extension officer said, you can plant whatever you want in your pasture, but in 2 years fescue will take over, because that's what grows here is fescue. And everybody has it or doesn't have it, that's what grows here. But I did discover that mowing is one of the most important things you can do. And I did it because I had too much grass and my birds couldn't keep up. I thought, this is out of hand. Then I realized that the manure falls through when it's shorter, when it's about very low 6 inches. The manure falls through. They get more interested in getting in and under and finding bugs in there because it's not laying over flat. And it keeps the grass coming back greener.
Yeah.
It keeps the grass healthier. The grass roots get stronger, so it's a win-win everywhere as long as you keep it mowed.
You keep it mowed at 6 inches? Is that what you said?
Somewhere in about that zone. The highest setting on my lawn tractor, I go to individual paddocks and just mow there. It's green, and it's all green, and they do find little spots that they can dust in, but they're not as much interested in dusting as they used to be either. We used to make paddocks devoid of any green stuff. But somehow we've gotten it into the routine, kept the grass growing. there because you want to dry out as much in the sun, and not so high that the root cage can't keep going on the grass. Try it up a bit.
We planted a lot of clover, they like that. And the clover grows pretty well.
Clover is awesome. I highly recommend it. We're not, I don't know if Rocco's growing in the year, but one of our other turkey farmers, Jerry Sykes, president of the coalition, he's growing clover and they're gobbling it up. And he really, really likes it. Poultry love it. What were you gonna say, Bob?
Well, I was just going to add, and Pam can probably jump in on this. She's a neophyte on chickens, but is very good on egg grazing. Is in a multi-species grazing pattern where you're sitting down there, the cows will actually come in, and what you want to do is you want to get them to eat down to that 3 or 4 inch level, and then you wait a week to let all the dung beetles do everything they need to do to the food that the cows do. Then throw your chickens in right behind them, and they'll come in and do exactly what you're doing. So in a more permaculture type of setting, you want to sit down there and create a multi-species grazing pattern for all of these guys. So whether it's cows and chickens and pigs and sheep, I mean, it's something that you need to consider as you go through this, and you're able to carry more animals on less acres by doing that. I'm getting ready to start experimenting with that in a big way. The other thing I'm doing is I'm not so concerned with grass so much as I am a variety of different species of forage for my animals. I want to bring, for instance, in grasses you have very shallow roots, but you've got weeds that come out of there that people think are noxious. The cows will automatically go and eat. Chickens will automatically go and eat because they know what they're doing. They know what they're needing. And the roots of the weeds tend to bring up nutrients that the grasses can't normally get to. So that's another consideration when you're considering forage rather than just going to monoculture. It's just giving them diversity as much as you can.
Good. Great thoughts.
We do it a lot with crop seconds, and so we'll go through, and we keep the grade A stuff and the fancy grade stuff for human consumption, and then the seconds all go to the poultry. And so our chickens are going to eat squash and melons and tomatoes and peppers. And if we ever have something, we'll go out and we'll take a slice and we'll, cut huge piles of just whatever's, interesting. They love pigweed. And so sadly, we let pigweed go to seed, not go to seed, but get, nice big flower heads on it because the chickens love it. They really dig it. And so it's something that we give them as a treat that it's free. And it's not really, having to seed anything or having to go out and determine a pasture mix, but the produce seconds has been wonderful. I mean, they totally love it.
So what about in the winter? I was just looking through that book and it had a picture of a tray with green sprouts. Would you do that for your chickens, grow some sprouts?
I think it's a great idea. Absolutely.
There's a farm in the Midwest that's sprouting, doing sprouts for the chickens in some other areas as well. We're going to experiment this year. Okay. This sprouting aspect boosts the regions of the green by 50%. It's an incredible amount of stress.
How are they serving it to the chickens? Is it in flats or?
No, I'm sat down there and just, that's the way I've done it with oats and alfalfa.
Oh, wow, so you're like germinating in a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, just to get Phillips water, and then you see them like this, and just add that stuff into it.
Awesome.
Nice. Any other questions on or thoughts on foraging? What kind of grass, what's growing around here? Is it fescue? Or do you know?
Fescue, bluegrass, white and red clover.
What have you noticed our turkeys eat as far as forage? Everything?
Yeah, everything really likes clover. And there's a couple grasses, I think, there's some bluegrass out there that they really get into. Yeah, pretty much. I'm sorry I missed it, but for me, it's less that and more kind of what they don't eat, and just so long as that stuff isn't thoroughly taken over.
Right. Yeah. And any that you saw, you've noticed that they don't eat?
Not grasses really, and depending on the size of your paddock, how often you're moving it, this applies for any animals. It's kind of a stock density kind of thing. They trample a lot too. So what they don't eat, the microbes will. What they don't eat, you're laying down as mulch and forage, or excuse, as mulch and building the soil. And assuming you're moving.
Is there anything dangerous, poisonous, as far as forage goes?
You know, to be perfectly honest, I'm sure there are. I've always been told, that's not entirely true. I have been told that animals are intelligent enough not to eat things that is poisonous
Less
to
than
them.
5.
If you leave them there long enough and they're starving and they eat something poisonous, that's kind of more your fault than theirs.
Right. Pat, you got, what was your little, you had that plastic covering something.
Winter wheat, I threw that down in a area that they were out of.
And then you have, the tarp was covering some berries or something. What-
Oh, blueberries.
Well, they
So
went
the
up-
birds didn't get them, and now the chickens are under them. Whenever they hear a hawk, they go under the blueberry.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't for to eat what's in there? for
No,
berries.
it was,
Okay.
it was to keep the birds
Protection.
from our berries.
Protection. All right.